What y'all doing? I am glad to see you all. I really did not think I would get an opportunity to even sit before my computer today. It's been an interesting day, a full day, and I just thought, even though I didn't get an opportunity to prepare any kind of discussion, uh, watch a whole lot of news to where I've got any details or anything. I had a lot on my mind today. Nothing, troubling or worrisome. Just um, spent a good bit of time in prayer today. So that always generates some things because I'm a mouthpiece. My job is to look, look, uproot, tear down, build, all those good things. So um, in the course of being me, um, today just having some thoughts around the topic of race. My brother's really been provoking me um, with his conversations, looking at those things from a spiritual perspective, and it's 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 provoking me because I know that it is where the heart of God is at this point, um, concerning His church, and concerning His people, and I mean just us as human beings, especially um, here in the States, here in the U.S. Um, if you want to start a war, you start talking about race. Hey sis, how you doing? You start talking about issues of race and lineage and culture around these parts. You ready to start a war, and I think it's a war we need to have. If we can be, if I can be honest, I think it's a conversation that we need to have, because if it's creating an issue out in the world, well, thank you for dropping in. I don't really have any kind of set conversation for tonight, so I'm just freestyling it here tonight, because it's time to go to bed and I'm wide awake. And so I've done my reading. I've done, all of the assignments, um, that I had to get done. Uh, I have one more big assignment I need to do before I go to bed. But um, I'm taking a moment to just jump in and say, hey, um, maybe encourage some conversation. Um, yeah, Bible study good tonight, man. I enjoyed that conversation. That was good. But yeah, we are. I think we're in the middle of some really critical times, and I think that we've reached a place specifically, for those of us who are Christian. I believe we've reached a place where we can no longer um, keep sitting conversations about race in the corner. There's a mosquito in here trying to take me out. And I just need him to know that he's defeated. He's going to lose this battle. And I need him to know he's winning right now. I mean, he is winning. Look, don't call Peter on me, but he got to die. Because he's not going to make it. Well, as long as he keeps darting around in front of my face, he will survive. He's winning the battle, but I'm gonna win the war. Um, but yeah, I think we're at a place where we can't keep pushing that conversation over in the corner. And unfortunately, it's being brought to the table by people who want it to go away. It's the craziest thing. Um, Look, these are not the mosquitoes we had when we were kids. I don't know what this thing is. I'm a little older than you. So the mosquitoes are, I'm a lot older than you, actually, now that I think about it. Forgive me. Um, yeah, but the mosquitoes were different back then. The mosquitoes knew how to stay outside. These mosquitoes come in, take up residence, they hang out, they bite you like really, 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 really bad and a whole bunch of times. They are, honey, they're resilient, they're fast. These little Usain Bolt mosquitoes, you can't catch them, they don't sit down. I'm like, how did you bite me and you don't sit still? I don't understand, sir. And I'll be needing a Benadryl fooling with him. So he got to go. He got to go. But I think I do think we're at a place where we're gonna have to confront this issue. You know, there's so much. Trying to educate myself as well as I can on this critical race theory because it seems to be the catchphrase that anytime there's something concerning race, um, it seems like it's just getting tossed in as critical race theory, and oh no, that's the boogeyman. And I think that if I were white, I would probably, be concerned to a degree. So, um, I want to better educate myself on the topic before I start really having in-depth chit chat about it. But just knowing the basics of what I've heard thus far, um, I think I understand why people have a problem. But at the same time, I think that if you are serious about attacking race, we've got to get to the place where we can talk to one another. Um, I can't vent at you and you can't vent at me, um, but we at least have to try to understand each other's perspective. Can I understand why you don't feel responsible? Definitely, especially if you're trying, the best you can to live at peace with all men, and you don't feel like there's anything that you do that is prejudiced or you know that could be categorized as racist. I can understand how you might feel that way, but I think you also have to realize that you don't have to try to be racist, given that we live in a situation where racism is already real. And so even the things you didn't intend to do, didn't intend to say, um, can be taken as racist depending on the perspective of the person that you're dealing with. And your intentions really don't matter. I remember when I was in school, and um, I've I've lived and worked in my life in various racial settings. Like, this is the blackest my life has ever been. Okay. Because I've lived in various places and dealt with people of various races, and even when I was away in school, most of my friends were not even American. um they were, most of them were people of color, which is a new phrase I'm trying to learn how to use. um Most of them were people of color. um very few very few very few whites, but I mean, I had spent a great deal of my life in school and other places with them, so I don't really tend to trip off their ignorance if that's the case. When I run into ignorance, I don't really trip off of it because it really didn't mean anything to me. Um, I know I'm as smart as you, if not smarter. I know I'm going to work as hard as you, if not harder. Um, and we're just people. So I'm going to trip off of your foolishness. And I'm okay with you just being crazy and stupid. It's fine. But I remember meeting this when I was in college. I remember working, I used to work for campus dining services, and we used to do the catering We used to do catering on campus, but we also would handle concessions at special functions. And the very first event that my manager, Daniel J. Swigum, I will never forget Dan. Um, he's the first person who ever trusted me with a supervisory position. Clearly, he was crazy. But he he got us the opportunity to handle the concessions at the Bluegrass Music Festival. Now, when it comes to music, I've always been like super eclectic, and I've I love I love music of any kind. I can find something in it to love. You know, I've got a Hebrew playlist that I play on Shabbat. I've got, it's just I can grow to love any kind of music because I love that expression. It could be. It really could be. For me, it was weird, sis, and I think that's a really common thing for people. And I don't know if people really realize how that shapes your experience, that your experience and how you deal with with racial settings as an adult. I don't know that people really know that when you've had a bad experience or when you've had a weird experiences, that it can be it is awkward, and those experiences don't go away. You remember, how you were treated. You remember how you were talked to. You remember how you were looked at. You remember all of those things, and so that doesn't just go away. I think that a lot of times, from the movies and portrayals of these very courageous Black people, that I think that people believe that we're just kind of, that we for real are magic. And we can just bounce back from whatever and just forget it. And that's it, sis. That's really, I think, one of the things that we have to learn when we're going through situations is, I see how this felt to me, and I think that because I experienced it and I know how it felt for me, that I have the responsibility to now not treat anybody like that, and to make sure that people don't feel like that. And I remember I had a refresher course in that when I was in actually as an adult. This was maybe 4 or 5 years ago. I was just so discontent with everything. And in that season, it even got difficult in prayer. It got difficult it was just like everything was just rough. But I'm still trying, I'm still trying. And I remember when that period broke, and I'm literally at work on my knees in my office with the door closed, just crying out to the Lord, because I hear him, and I'm experiencing his presence in a way that I hadn't in a while. And the thing that was, said was, you know, how this feels. Now imagine how people who don't get to spend time in the Word, who don't get the opportunity to, minister in their churches, who don't get an opportunity to do some of the things that you um, can sometimes treat like they're a burden. Imagine how those people feel. And it was like, you know what? I hear you. I feel you on that. I feel you on that. Absolutely. Absolutely, sis. Absolutely. That's a really good experience. That is a really good experience and really common. And sometimes I think people forget kids can be very cruel. Kids can be very cruel. And I remember I've always had favorite teachers. Um and I've in seasons, I think, probably been, you know, called teachers at a time or two. And it really wasn't that. It was just I was a little bit. I've always been a old. I've always been old, even when I was a kid, and so the stuff that kids like to do never really interested me, even as a kid. Uh, so I remember my friend Dama and I, in elementary school, helping our teacher, grade papers on our break when we're supposed to be, outside. We're supposed to be in the gym. We come back from lunch and, help sort out paper or stuff like that. And so I've always had amazing teachers. That part, I've always been blessed with really good teachers. Um, After kindergarten, my aunt was my teacher. I think she was like the aide or something. But after that, I always had really good teachers, um, exceptional teachers, regardless of whether I was in. It didn't matter what school district I was in. I've always been blessed to come across great people. And the weird part is, I would have really good experiences with teachers that other people despised. Um, just really couldn't stand. And it's like, yeah, she was always nice to me. That's interesting. Um, but yeah, teachers really have the ability to shape what your experience is like, because kids can be horrendous. Um, and I remember, some of those kids who made it difficult for people. I was, again, always fortunate because I always had just a real quirky sense of humor. That somehow or the other, I never ended up the kid who was getting bullied or picked on, or things made difficult for them. I was always in that kind of outsider crew where people just really didn't bother with us. Oh wow. Oh wow. Yeah, my kindergarten experience was weird because, for one, I wasn't old enough to be in school. That's the first thing. The first problem we had. And it's funny, my sister and I were just talking about this a little earlier. I hope that they don't try to put my mom in jail for this, but my mom doctored one of my little birth verification cards so I could go to kindergarten early. So I've always been in school with kids that were older than me. So in kindergarten, I just wasn't on that. It wasn't fun. Kindergarten was not fun. I look at kindergartners now. Like, my son had a great experience in kindergarten. And oh, High Ridge. Yeah. 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 I having to make those kind of major moves too can be complicated. But yeah, yeah, my son had a fantastic kindergarten experience. His teachers, but he was in District 189 for his entire um, college prep situation. He was in District 189 that entire time. He had great teachers in East St. Louis. Um, he was at a community school. Alta was a neighborhood school, so it was small enough for them to, it was big enough for them to get accustomed to, get really good socialization, but it was small enough that it was still really community minded, and so he had a really good experience there. But kindergarten, I did not like kindergarten at all. I have very vivid memories of it, and I hated it the whole time. What I would love was when I could get an opportunity. My aunt was a first grade teacher in Cahokia. And over the summers, or whenever I was up here visiting, at the end of the school year, she would take me to school with her. And although I couldn't fully read well, I could outread her students. And I remember I learned how to write the number 5 at school with her one day. And it was fun. Yeah, I can imagine. I can imagine that. That's always. I was listening to a teaching today, and the minister that I was listening to was talking about, just how school districts, most educational settings, really struggle dealing with male children, but specifically Black male children was, what he was talking about. And the little bit of experience that I've had working with children, I work with children in ministry, children's church, that kind of setting, Sunday school, that kind of thing. And I can truly say that I think most settings are not equipped to handle boys, period, because boys are adventurous. And I know this isn't popular with the, don't lock your kid into a gender community, but I'm not one of those people. Um, Little girls will sit and talk all day. Little girls will sit and cut crafts and talk about their day and their life and how they're doing, and they will flow with conversation all day long. Little boys got to get up and do something. Not that little girls don't. It's just little boys just seem to have their energy is a little different. And many times, because, you know, I think a lot of times just because they're Black boys, they're seen differently. Black children, period. And we've seen the studies and the research is out there that when people look at Black children, we don't get to be kids. That young Black girls and boys are seen by whites older than they are, so they're harsher with our kids. They're not as patient with our kids because they always perceive our kids as being older than they are. And it's not cool. It's really not cool. It's really not cool. And it's so important. Um, it is so important. And since I probably would like to have some conversation with you and Minister Jason at some point, because you are a homeschool parent and I don't know a lot of Black homeschool parents. And I think that that's an option that's not pursued enough in our community. Let me know if at some point you'd be willing to come on and just kind of share about your experience, because and not, not to get into any kind of details or anything like that, that might, you might not be comfortable talking about, but simply just about the decision and some of the resources that are available out there. Because I really do believe that there is that avenue is just not pursued enough. I think one of the good parts about what we just went through with the quarantine period is some parents getting an opportunity to educate their kids at home and really be more hands-on in the education process for their kids, and finding that it is doable. It is possible for me to at least, those basic formative years, even if you don't, do full homeschool, the full, 12 years or however long, um, your child needs. But I think that would be a very good conversation. So yes, ma'am, you all pray about it and talk about it and see if that's something you'd be interested in doing. But you are correct. They're quick to label labels. Our Black boys are quickly labeled with behavior issues, all because they do not fit into their cookie cutter curriculum. That is extremely true. That's extremely true. It is so amazing that we're in a time where there's so much creativity, but we seem to keep using outdated methods and things that we know don't work, specifically that we know don't work for Black kids. Things that specific we know it doesn't work. We know it's not beneficial, and yet we continue to do them. And I love when people are brave enough to, one, trust the Lord with their children's upbringing and education, but two, to not be afraid to do for your kids what you know they need. I think that's, yeah, you're right. You are absolutely correct. It's like a factor. It really is. It really is. And I really, I have a major concern and major heart for kids who aren't interested in going to college. It's a debate that I have with, and it's not a popular opinion, even in my family, because my family, I have quite a few people that are in the field of education in my family, and I know that college is the gateway to a lot of opportunities. But I also know that we lost a lot of things in the Black community when we really got focused on college education was the only way to go. And like I try to figure out why I need to go to a community college to become a truck driver. Um, why I have to go to a community college and take out student loans and all of those things to be a cosmetologist. Vocational education that used to be available to kids. There was a time when kids could graduate from high school, and I think they still can, but somehow or the other, it's routed through the community colleges now. And it's weird to me that the things that we knew were really beneficial for families, that were really beneficial in our community, for the sake of, and again, this is an unpopular opinion, but for the sake of looking like white communities, we forsook the things. Is forsook a word? We have forsaken. I know that's a word. We have forsaken the things that we knew were beneficial. You know, little brother learned how to fix roofs, working alongside his dad, and their family. They've fixed roofs. And very skilled. Can put a roof on your house right now if you needed one, and that's not seen as good as that kid that can sit in the classroom all day and pass all the tests and go to college. I think we got to find another way, because I think we're losing too many kids, because everybody's not. Some kids, and it's not about. Um, I love the explanation Apostle gave tonight on the difference between being an intellectual and being intelligent. It's not about being smart either. My son's a little micro genius. If you ask me, actually, you look at his test scores and see how well he did in school. My son does very well in school. He didn't like school though, and I thank the Lord that he at a young age tapped into um, what is his life's work. But so many kids don't get that, and they end up, not getting the opportunity to really explore everything that's in them, simply because you're not on that college prep track. You're not in a gifted program. um but again, there used to be that opportunity, where I can get my my nursing certificate, because I don't want to, I don't even desire to be any of those other things. I just want to learn how to help take care of people. I just want to be a hands-on care provider. And it's just, I just don't, I think that we have put higher education on a platform where it didn't deserve to be, simply because I know too many people who were not college people that were geared towards college. And when I say not college people, they didn't want to do it. They didn't want to go. They didn't want to go. Yeah, I agree, sis. I think that's a big deal. Is there was a time when education was seen as a life's work, and now we have people who work in schools because that's what that's the job they trained for. They don't live in the community. Once upon a time, teachers lived in the community, were an active part of the community. And so it was, things were just different. And meanwhile, you've got those who do have a passion, that so many times the procedures and the rules and the regulations zap the love out of them, because they don't really get to focus on educating the kids. They're focused on the statistics. And I know you got to pay for things. I understand, how grants work. I know you got to pay for things, and you got to have the data for this and the data for that. But our systems have become so data driven that we forget about the outcomes, you know, and these children are dealing with a whole different set of circumstances. We have children who are, blessed to be, in two-parent homes, and things are pretty stable and life is good for them. But many times, your child is being educated next to a kid who doesn't have enough to eat. Who doesn't have, how focused is this child gonna be if they're getting to school hungry? And I just don't think that education is tailored to the child anymore. I think it's more so bring your kids in and let us fit them into this mold. And we'll find out where they fit into the mold. It's not even really about them discovering for themselves where they fit. You know, um, I left high school perfectly prepared to go and be an accountant because that's what I was good at. I was good at math. And it wasn't until I got the opportunity in a college setting. Yeah, it's you are this is that's exactly it. The system is the agenda, not the student. So many times, and I see so many who try to who start out on that route of, I'm here for the kids, I'm gonna look out for the kids, I'm here for the kids. But it's kind of like it's almost like racism. The structure is the structure, and you're eventually gonna end up being a part of the structure. Yeah, you're going to end up being a part of the structure. And that's it. That's exactly what ends up happening. Is if you send me your child and your child can't fit in this mold, um, there's something wrong with them. And we're going to get that child categorized real quick so we can get out of my classroom because all these other kids over here fit in the mold. All the, yeah, it's terrible. And I just don't think, you know what I'm saying? And I just don't think that children should be broken by our system. I just don't. And I don't think enough, time and attention is paid to, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That's exactly, look, that's the rotation. And, but I have a cousin who, his mom refused she refused to go that route. She refused to allow them to, medicate her kid and call her child disabled. When so many, for the sake of a little extra income, were perfectly willing. She was like, I don't think that's what's going on with him right here. He needs to be communicated with a different way. And so I love when I see, educational settings where you still are able to have kind of that community based approach to teaching the kids. And the teachers really are connected and they really do care, and um, they really do somehow find the time. you know like I said, I got teachers in my family, so I know how hard they work when they care. When they care, it's a 24-hour job. It doesn't cut off. I know the nights, that, my cousin has, set up, trying to come up with strategies and ideas and plans when she was in the classroom. And now she's an administrator and, still seeing the late nights and the long weekends and just how much work it takes to to do it in a good way, you know even when sometimes, people don't agree with or understand the decisions that you make. um, Always keeping that focus on the children, um, not our projects, not our pet projects, and the things that we want to push, but really understanding that we have to. I don't know. I just know that I've been educated with white kids. I've been educated with black kids, and what I find is kids are kids. You have really smart kids. You have kids who learn in a different way, and if you find how they learn, they're really smart kids. Um, I find so many children what they're not interested in. It's like talking to a wall. It's not that I don't want to learn it. I don't care. And you have the challenge of figuring out how to reach me. I know it's difficult for you. I know it's complicated. I know you didn't intend to have 25 kids in your classroom. Yeah. Yes. 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 And that's really it. Is if we can, if we can keep our systems focused on what they're there for. You know, if you're in education, the child is your focus. If you're in, you know, any kind of public setting, working, what's your goal? What's why do you exist? And then what can you do to make sure you do that well? Because it is so easy to get lost, and before you know it, you're not really focused on what you're supposed to be focusing on. My sister and I were talking about, you know, people who work with the public and how you have to have the right mindset for that. Because if your mind is right, even when you get tired, your ability to care about the people that you're serving doesn't change. But we have a lot of people who end up where they end up, and this seems like an easy enough job, and they have come to the work with an agenda, and it's a mess every time. I don't know. I really don't know. I think right now it is who's, as the old preachers used to say, whosoever will, let them come. I think if you're willing, come on. And especially if you're working in an area where the income is at a certain level, so you can come on in here and qualify, you know, for some of the student loan forgiveness. And you know, those programs are difficult to get into, but a lot of times it's, you know, hey, if you'll take this job, um, you know, come on in. And like with any unionized job, you know, it's it covers the bad just as well as it covers the good. Oh, especially in the hood, it covers the bad as well as it covers the good. And so those teachers who didn't know how to manage their classroom, so there were kids getting bullied, there were kids getting mistreated because these teachers didn't know how to manage their classrooms. Um, that was one of the things that I think was really good for us. You know, for me growing up, was I never had the experience of having a teacher who was out of control of their classroom. I remember Miss Williams, Miss Nancy, Miss Powers, Mr. Sansone, all of those teachers that I had, they didn't play around in their classrooms. Look, okay, you better revelate on that thing. But you know, when they're able to control the classroom, you don't see as much of that bullying. You know, yeah, there's going to be some things that happen while the kids are on the playground, or you know, passing from class to class. But so many times, you know, if there's not control in the classroom, it's room for all kinds of mess, you know, to be going on, um, while nobody's paying attention. Exactly. While they're not even trying to see all of the different directions. And, you know, parents are so cruel, and don't realize we're dealing with a much crueler situation now. And so those things, those lessons that they used to teach us, we'll just deal with it, you know, just toughen up. Well, it's a whole different level now. You know, if kids were picking on me in elementary school when I was a kid, at least when I went home, unless they were on the phone all night talking about me, you know, it was a wrap. But if you happen to go down the rabbit hole of any of these young people's social media, and the ones that go to school, um, it's 24 hours because these kids are getting bullied while they're not at school on Facebook. You know, you can't, people come in and commenting under your pictures and saying horrible things about you and all of that. You know, it's they're exposed to it 24 hours a day. You know, when we were a kid, if you were having a difficult time during the day, you at least got to go home. But now, you know, the kids are exposed to it 24 hours a day. If they're getting picked on at school, they're getting picked on social media. And because there's so much um, where kids are being brought in and it's not neighborhood schooling anymore, you don't have. I remember how we learned to get along with each other in that walk home from school. Because our school, the school we went to, was like 2 blocks from my house in elementary school. And in that walk, there would be fights, there would be arguments, but we would also work some things out too. I remember we had a girl in our class in the 5th grade. She was such a bully. I won't even call her name because I know she's changed now, but she was such a bully. And one day she's running my friend home because she's going to beat her up. And she wasn't going to fight her, but she knew my friend was scared of her. So she got joy out of chasing her home and threatening to fight her. And then one day, we're about maybe halfway home, and we find out, we didn't know, that she had a bad hip. And she was a really tall girl for her age, but she had a bad hip. And so as she's running, trying to chase my friend home, her hip went out. And she crumbles to the ground, and she's just crying. It had to have been just like a catch or something, because she walked the rest of the way home. But when she fell, she was so humiliated. She was so broken that we had to help her home. Now, look, we had to turn around and help her home. She was so broken in that walk to her house. She lived a block past us. The very girl who she's trying to run home, now her and her friends have to help you home. And it changed her. We learned how to work things out. We learned, how to argue, but work it out by the time you got to school, because we had a principal who ran his school. Mr. Donald didn't take no mess, and it didn't matter if it was happening away from the school. If he could see you, he treated it like it happened at school. So there was a safety zone where you knew you wasn't going to do nothing to nobody as long as Mr. Donald could see you. And so, or heard about it. If word made it back to school that you were doing things, that's just how entrenched in the community they were. It made a difference. It made a difference. And this was as a former coworker of yours had a 9-year-old nephew who was getting bullied. Yeah. And that's exactly it. It's not the same getting picked on that we dealt with. And I hear a lot of times people say, these young people just can't handle nothing. They just need to toughen up. And it's like, no, they're dealing with a different time. They're dealing with a different spirit. They're dealing with a different pressure to be perfect. I was listening to a talk show, one of those kind of an advice type portion of a show where the viewers get to send in letters and ask questions. And so many times you hear stuff like, I'm 21 years old, and do you think it's too late for me to start, change my career? Do you think it's too late for me, have I? And I'm like, you're 21, 20 anything? Are you serious? I'm 50, about to change my career as soon as the Lord lets me. But they have such a pressure on them for perfection. Filter your pictures. The young kids are dressing, more adult now. They're behaving more adult now. And they have such a different pressure on them to fit in and do what everybody else is doing, look like everybody else. Sometimes it's literally nothing about you that's different or strange or weird. It's just because they didn't like you. And it's why I think we as parents have a responsibility to know how our kids are different, know how our kids are wired, and nurture it. If your child is different, you have a responsibility. I laugh because I repented, because I really feel like my son is in many ways a mini me. But he has his own mind. And so what we always required of him was to think, like, and discuss it. Say what you need to say. Even if someone's going to be upset about what you have to say what you're feeling. Say what it is. And so I think we have a responsibility when we know our kids are wired different, when we know our kids process information a certain kind of way, we know our kids are emotionally wrapped a certain way, we know our kids are mentally wrapped a certain kind of way. I got a relative that's quick draw McGraw, you know, hey, ready to go off in an instant. Well, because I know that, I think I have a certain responsibility when I'm dealing with her, not to cater to her foolishness, but definitely to make sure that, I do what I can to help manage it. Look, when it comes down to kids' fashions, I'm so glad that my child is an old man. I'm so glad that my child is an old man. Minister Clemisha, if you have any skill or talent in sewing, sis, I feel you, because so many of the things that you see in the stores, you have to, moms with daughters, especially if you try to, stay on any kind of fashion trends, you have to be Houdini with the sewing machine or the layering. You almost have to be gifted at layering. I remember back when I was at Abundant Love, I was impressed with, there was a family of girls. There were two girls, and then they had their cousins, and they were real slim built kids, so it was a lot easier, I think, for them too. And I mean, and I think that that's a thing in fashion as well. For the girls that are more traditionally built, I think it's easier to dress them conservatively than our little girls got hips. Our little girls got curves. And so it's harder to find, girl, Bermuda shorts. I was at the store the other day, and I was on the phone with my sister, and I told her, I said, nobody warned me that draws were going to be the fashion this year. And I'm sorry for those of you who don't understand what draws is, but um, we speak Ebonics around these parts. And right now, the current summer fashion trend, I know the biker shorts came back, um, which who, but I don't know. I just my nerves are bad because it's early in the summer, and these crop tops are out here, and I know we're on a body positivity uh, wave in the common culture, but I'm tired, y'all. I'm tired. I'm tired. I'm tired. I'm tired already. And it's just July. We got a long way to go. It's just the first week in July, and I'm tired. I'm tired. All I want, But as I was saying about the family, their girls, as they got older, their mom taught them modesty as young girls, and so when I tell you they were wizards with layering, and this was during the time when the low rise jeans were really the thing, when when the low rise jeans were really the thing. Them girls would have on like two shirts. They have on a t-shirt that was tucked in the pants, and then they would have another shirt, and then they would have a little sweater, or the little short sweaters used to be in style to cover their arms and shoulders and things, just making sure that these young girls weren't out here showing off more than they needed to. But when I tell you, I think modesty got killed during modesty caught COVID and died, because baby, this year, if you got it, show it. And it don't matter. It don't matter. There was a time when we covered stretch marks, and I believe in being happy with who you are. What you got is what you got. But there was a time when we covered bellies. There was a time. There was a time. There was a time. And it's like some of the fashion decisions now look like they hurt. I mean, it looks most uncomfortable. It looks most uncomfortable. And I just feel like, if the Lord has given you your own private lace in the form of stretch marks, I just feel like you should cover them up. That's just my opinion. That's just mine. That's just mine. I don't know. That's just mine. I'm not a fashionista. You see what I got on? I'm comfortable. But I just feel like, if you got your own designs built in, you got the Starburst stretch marks, that you probably should have on a shirt that's long enough. I'm just saying. Yeah. Look, dragon stripes some of the time. It is just like, could you at least have lotioned them before you came out? Because shea butter is good for a lot of things, and I hear it cure tiger stripes. I, I, I just, what we not gonna do is be ashy and striped. Oh, I probably shouldn't say these things, but I think it's important that we help our young girls, make good decisions about things. Um, Especially the ones that we have responsibility for. I can't tell nobody what's going on, Brother Demetrius. I can't tell nobody to do with their kids. Praise be unto the Lord. I was one and done. But the ones that I have some responsibility for, know where I stand and how I feel. But that is that. So, hey, bro, I didn't really have anything I was on talking about tonight. I just been on here freestyling, and Ministers Jason and Clemisha have really helped me out a whole lot, with being able to talk some about, just our educational experiences, ours, and our young people, and the responsibility we have as parents and those that work in education, with making sure that we're creating an experience that's focused on our kids and not on whatever kind of project we're trying to push, whatever agenda we're trying to push. Um, and those are areas where I think we really gonna have to have some conversations, because it is another area where race becomes a huge issue. I have so many people in life who were participated in different busing programs, and a lot of times that stuff was very hard on them. And I remember when the year that I was um, the year that I had my son, I remember I was still in school. On the apartments that I lived in, there was a young boy who lived 2 apartments down. Never met his parents because they were graduate students, so you never saw them. Um, but he would be outside, and he was an only child. And at the time, I had a Nintendo system, and I had my games sitting. Remember those cartridges? My cartridges, they were stacked on the windowsill because I didn't have a bookshelf yet. And he walked past that window. His nerves were bad, and, and he finally worked up the nerve to knock on the door. And he said, "Hey, ma'am, do you have any kids in there?" I'm like, "No, I'm not only kid." And he said, "Yeah, so who video games are those? Can I play with those games?" And that little boy, we started trading Nintendo cartridges. we started trading Nintendo cartridges. And it was really tough for me because I worked nights. So I would come in, and pretty much I knew once he got the games, they were gone. But it was what it was. But one of the things that I noticed is that baby had to be on the bus at 6 o'clock in the morning. We lived in Columbia. We lived on campus there at Mizzou. he had to be on the bus at 6:30 in the morning to get to school in Jeff City on time. That bothered me so bad because I'm thinking, how well is he gonna be able to focus? He's on the bus at 6:30. That it says, I know that it can be a traumatic experience. And I think a lot of what we're seeing and we see and experience with kids who are participating in those programs where they've got to be at school at 6:30 and 7 o'clock in the morning, I think those kids are rest broken. Cause I don't know about you, but as a kid, I didn't like to go to bed at night. Nothing's changed. It's 12:30 and I'm sitting up here talking to y'all and I should probably be in the bed. But I didn't like to go to bed at night. Exactly. And they've been up at 6:30 and they either left exhausted, rushing parents on one end of the day at night, either trying to make sure that they're going to sleep or in the morning, ensuring that they're getting up and getting off to school. And I'm like, who thought that through and thought that made sense? That these babies need, and I'm sure he wasn't the only kid that they were picking up, but he was the only kid on that side of the subdivision that went to school in Jeff City. The other kids went to school there in Columbia. We had two or three other families where the kids either were getting homeschooled or they were going to Columbia Public Schools. But I'm like, how can you? I'm like, they got to be tired by the time they get to school. And when I got to know a friend of mine who drove bus for kids that were participating in a busing program, and I'm like, oh yeah, the kids, oh, they go back to sleep on the school bus. I'm like, on the school bus, the babies are rest broken. How are they supposed to do well? And imagine you're getting bused to a district, and you're going to school with kids who, like, just got up, woke up at a normal hour because they didn't have to leave their house 2 hours ago for a commute to school. And we expect the experience to be the same for all of those kids. It's just, I'm like, I think I understand the principle that they were going for, but it really troubles me how long kids have had to participate in these programs. Sometimes their entire educational career, the kids are at a disadvantage. And it's like, why not just make the schools better where the kids are? I don't know. Maybe I'm not an administrator. Exactly. You know what I'm saying? And then when we talk about diversity a lot, we talk about inclusion a lot. Total disadvantage. Exactly. Total disadvantage. And, we talk about diversity a lot, we talk about being inclusive. But one of the things we don't consider, even in those kind of situations, is belonging. If I'm always coming into your neighborhood, at the end of the day, I don't care what you call it. You can call it busing program, you can call it DSEG, you can call it whatever you want to. At the end of the day, I'm coming into your neighborhood. So I'm already other. I'm already not a part of the community. And so whatever differences there are, you know, prayerfully, my mom has a car. So if something happens to me while I'm in school, she's able to come and check on me. But so many times parents are working jobs where I can't just up and leave my job. I'm going to lose my job. I got to go take care of my kid. I got to go see what's going on. And it's just like, there are just so many, think about the fear that causes. I live in the city of St. Louis. For those of you who might be familiar with this area, you live in St. Louis City, but you're going to school in Pacific. You're going to school in Rockwood. And so, you have to learn at an early age, just that ability to be separate from families. Bro, trust and believe. They always recognize the outsider, especially when the difference is racial. It's y'all see my field worker hands. I've been picking at my polish all day. Um, but of course, they always recognize the outsider. Always, especially if there's a racial difference, especially if there's a racial difference. And if you think we haven't developed community on that 2 hour bus ride that we got every day, that's become a community in and of itself. That's become another opportunity for something unsafe to happen. To this day, I avoid school buses like the plague because it always seems like if there's really bad accidents on the highway, a school bus is involved. So I try to stay away from school buses on the highway. But the drivers are tired too. You know, they've been driving around the city picking up kids, and then they got to get out here, and it's just I don't know. I just think that educating our kids is so important, and so many times it's done in the worst possible way. I don't know. And you're blessed, if you have a child who's able to navigate those waters with no problems, and you're comfortable, talking to teachers, and going to meetings where you're having face-to-face conversations with administrators, and you're able to really advocate for your child in a pretty consistent way. But so many of our parents, I mean, it's difficult for them to even get the time away from work to be able to go and address what's going on with their kids. It's just, I don't know, man. There's so many things. There's so many ways that we could do things differently and better. But I think we have to keep trying. And it's definitely an area where we have to, keep our kids lifted. But as I said, where you have access, um, be involved and be as involved as you can. One of the things I'm looking forward to for retirement is my nephew, you better know it. That's a real thing. If your child's not the teacher's favorite, they're not trying to hear you. That's an absolute truth. That's I know from the things that I've seen myself and heard myself. Um, again, my son was always, memorable and did really well in school. So he was given breaks and chances that I know other kids didn't get. Um, I tended to be very mannerable. I could be a little bit of a cut up, but I did really well in school, and I was a teacher's pet a lot of the time because of that. So and I didn't really have a lot of close family connections. A lot of time I moved around a lot, and so many times that teacher who had a heart for me was really a big deal for me because that was a connection that I was able to make. um Look, trust and believe. I know they will have meetings with you just to say on paper that they address the issue. Exactly. And many times the way of addressing the issue is referring your child to something that's not beneficial, and that starts them down a road. But the other thing that I think isn't done enough is highlighting the resources that become available to kids once, if they're able to get into the programs. Because so many times we only know a piece of the benefits that are available. I remember I didn't know until I went to college that um, there were educational supports that you could qualify for based on your IEP when you were in high school. I didn't know. Um, I'm almost certain I probably should have had my son and myself both uh, evaluated for attention deficit because the struggle is real. But found out, your kid could get assistance with taking notes. There were tutorial services that were available. And so many of those things we don't know about, but I found out about them because there were some kids who had advocates that were really working for them and made sure that they got everything that they needed. I remember the guy who was busting the curve in our sociology class. He had a note taker. I wanted to fight him, but then once I got a chance to know him and learned his story, I just wanted his notes. Because he had a paid note taker, and it's like, man, if I could get a hold of those notes, because this professor is putting me to sleep, but he's got somebody who's paid to come in here, and he's able to freely participate in the conversation because he doesn't have to take notes. And it ended up being such a help for him, but it was to counteract some of the issues that he was dealing with because he was a war vet and he had a brain injury. And so I don't begrudge him the help that he got. It's just, man, how do we make sure that our kids, should they decide to pursue a college education, that they get every single one of those resources? So, for those who have kids who are, receiving special services, make sure that once your kid, transfers over to, a community college or a 4-year college, that you get every educational support that your child can qualify for. Because many times we don't know to ask, or many times we are, yeah, sis, I wish there's so many things that now I'm like, Lord, thank you for your grace and mercy carrying my kid through. But there were so many things that he would have benefited from, and so many things that they're really, yeah, there were just so many things out there, but we didn't know. We didn't know. Um, I don't know. My mom was never off work to go to PTA meetings. My mother wasn't here. I was raised most of my life by my grandparents, and so um, they weren't going to PTA meetings to find out about stuff that was going on. A lot of, and that was the story for quite a few of my friends. We didn't have a car. My granddad, wasn't into that. He wasn't doing that kind of stuff. Um, my grandmother, had a bunch of kids she was responsible for. So, she wasn't, out there to find out about a lot of things. Um, and even what's really funny is I was a very involved parent, but a lot of the things that were available, unless you know to specifically ask for them, you don't know that they're available. And so, I recall when, kids would go away to college, there would be resources made available to help where, those identified, areas, areas where, there could be some problems, that there's so much available out there to help, like, you know, finding different softwares that will read what's on the screen. I mean, it's just, there's so many things out here available now that, if you do have a child, exactly. And that's really what it is. That's really what it is there was such a stigma attached to special services. I know during my time in school, there was such a stigma attached that you just, it's like, you know what, that's all right. I'm good. I'll figure this out. I'll figure this out. And unfortunately, it shaped our experience. It shaped our experiences in weird ways. And so, I was a lot older when, like, when I started, I started singing and stuff. I didn't really get involved in extracurricular activities in school because we didn't have a car. We didn't have a way to get back and forth. And it's not like I was extremely gifted, but had an interest. But a lot of those things we just didn't really get to participate in because you don't know what you don't know. And when you don't have someone to ask those questions for you, when you don't have somebody to be that go between, and that's one of the things I really do want to get involved in, once I'm done with this career with social services, is I really do want to work with our kids and be that person who can be there to advocate for that child. Be that person who is volunteering my time, um, to spend time making sure that that kid that doesn't have that parent that knows, that parent that's not at work. And because that's what we did when I had a young child in school, was I was sick. You ended up, because you were available, because you were available. Yeah, and that's what most people did. Sis, you just kind of got by the best you knew how, what you could figure out as a child. And so ultimately, there were a lot of things that you end up missing out on when you're having to figure things out as a kid, and you really just don't want to be in the way. Yes, there needs to be a lot more mentoring programs available to you. And that's one of the things. My sister and I were actually strategizing tonight, on an idea that's been in my heart over the last year, um, uh, to do some things with some young girls that are friends of the family, and really start working on some, just taking advantage of opportunities to, get them out to different cultural events, not just Black cultural events, but, you know, giving them an opportunity to go to the symphony, giving them an opportunity, to experience fine dining, give them an opportunity to go do some things that they might not normally do, so that as they're growing up, they're not unfamiliar with those environments. The reason that I was able to respond well when put in certain situations was because what the devil meant for evil, God made it good. I got moved around a lot because of some instability in my family. I got moved around a lot. But what that meant was I got used to different environments and different atmospheres. And I learned how to flow. I learned how to find my flow. Um, Unfortunately, it does mean that there were times when I got lost. And so identity was a real challenge for me. Who are you? What do you like to do? Not just what do you need to do to make it through this situation, but who are you? Where do you stand? That was a challenge for me because I always had to try to find my flow. I always had to try to find my place. And it wasn't until maybe middle school that I really just kind of settled into understanding you're weird. And the Lord sent me some weird friends, and we liked the same things. We watched the same shows. We listened to the same music. And that was where I found my tribe, seventh grade. But that's a lot of years to be trying to find yourself. That's a lot of years. That's a lot of years. But yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It is, that's why, Yvette and I enjoy the kind of friendship that we have now, is because we were lunatics in the seventh grade. And but the Lord knew what we needed. And so that's my prayer for our young people, is that, despite all the things that are thrown at them that they're gonna have to deal with, racism, um, violence, um, all of those things, yeah, all of those things that kids are gonna have to deal with, you know, emotional challenges, needing somebody there when parents don't understand, because parents don't always understand. I tried, the best I knew how. But hey, sis, I'm at the place now where it's like, you know what? It is okay. I'm awkward, and that's fine. And what's really funny is at 50. I hear so many times those areas where I'm different. I still hear people trying to change me. No, you really need to come. You really need to change that. And it's like, probably not. It's who I am. I'm sorry. If it doesn't work for you, it don't work for you. I'm not. I am literally not everybody's cup of tea. I know I'm not. I know I'm not. And I am definitely one of those people. Either you're gonna love me or you hate me. I'm not somebody who you're gonna be milk toast about. You're gonna either really like me or really just, oh my gosh, get on my nerves so bad. So, and I'm okay with it. I'm literally okay with it. I find stuff funny that nobody else finds funny. That used to bother me. I'm okay with it now. People don't know my journey. And so the fact that I can find things to laugh at, the fact that depression hasn't won, the fact that oppression, doesn't have me, the fact that nah, you don't know my story. So yeah, I'm real goofy. If I wasn't goofy, I'd probably be crazy. If I wasn't goofy, you'd have to fight me every day. Probably. I would probably be one of those brawlers that the Bible talks about if the Lord didn't give me the ability to find extreme laughter in horrible situations. Um, yeah, he wrapped me. He didn't wrap me real tight. He didn't wrap me real tight. But he holds me close. Glory. But yeah, I'm gonna go on ahead and go to bed because I can sit here and do this all night because I enjoy. I love you all so very, very much. Um, but yeah, I really we've got some difficult times ahead of us. Our kids definitely have some tough times ahead of them, but I'm so grateful. Like you all's kids have such beautiful spirits. I pray for them because we live in such a harsh world. We live in such a mean world, and they're beautiful souls, and I pray that the Lord allows them to find the people that are for them and with them, that help build them up, that just help them reach their full potential because they have so much to offer. Because kids are mean. I know there are a lot of videos people circulate with these little smart mouth kids, and I don't find them all funny. Some of them are humorous because you could tell the kid just doesn't know. But some of these videos, it's like that little boy, little James. I don't find nothing entertaining about little James. Little James, I want to spank him, and I don't believe in beating your kids all the time. I believe a good whipping will save a life, but I just want to spank him. The way that he talks to his mama, the way that he, But there's another video where this little girl gets into it with her teacher, and she looks like a little old drunk woman, and she's literally probably 4 or 5 years old, and she's telling the teacher how she needs a break from her and these kids. Oh, the video tickles me to bits and pieces. But our kids, that they're living in a really harsh world, and I pray that they just get to embrace who they are. And if you're quirky, be quirky. I'm weird, and I survived. The Lord still used me. Hey, it's all good. So I thank the Lord for putting us in the same village because it's a blessing. It's a blessing to have people who understand you. That you can walk beside, love the Lord, and all of those good things. So I am grateful for you all. I pray that everybody get a good night's sleep, and rest well. Or for those of you who are at work, that you get a peaceful shift where you can find yourself a good seat and put your feet up. Brother Demetrius, if you and Symmetria are riding out tonight, I'll be checking my videos because I know you're like me. You'll be up at 12 o'clock at night going in about racism in the body of Christ, and I'll have to catch that video tomorrow. You reminded me of some decisions we have to make with Malachi this coming school year. He's high functioning on the spectrum, but they're not handling him right. Yeah, bro, trust. I'll be in prayer if there's anything we can help with advocating as well. Look, I know we always St. Louis, but um, we can make phone calls as well. Um, but yeah, it's tough when you're dealing with people out here, and so many times I've seen parents so disrespected by the professionals. It ain't even funny. It just it sickens me. It sickens me, because I don't have the particular kind of education you have. And for people who know me, I enjoyed school, but I'm not. I don't love it like that. And many times you will see people who, because they are skilled in a particular kind of communication, they use that almost as a weapon to build a wall and make it difficult for you to do what you need to do for your kids. And I hate those things. And I've seen parents so disrespected and so discounted simply because they didn't know the technical term for one thing or the other. And so that's one of the things I want to I want to attack when the Lord frees me. When the Lord frees me from actually let me hey, he's already freed me. Let me stop. um when I walk in faith, my apostle talked about it tonight. When I walk in faith concerning my future and my destiny. um yeah, it's gonna be interesting. But yeah, we got some work ahead of us, but we here for it. And so I'm looking forward to it. It's a tough time, but it's a good time. It's a good time to have your eyes open and be listening to what it is the Lord has to say. So, bro, we'll definitely be in prayer that the doors that you need open, that you find the person who understands Malachi, that he's able to land in the right place for his destiny. Um, that every trick and trap the enemy would plan to frustrate his educational experience, um, that the Lord block it, break it, deal with it, and give him what he needs in order to be able to do the things that he needs to do. And I pray that in Jesus' name, um, not just for Malachi, but for every kid, that barriers to education be broken. Because in this America, many times it's the gateway to a good income. So uh, I know my womb is blessed. Uh, First Lady's womb is blessed. Minister Kamisha's womb is blessed. Um, so there is a goodness that we expect for our kids to be able to walk in, not out of arrogance, but simply we know the devil is a defeated foe in our lives and concerning our children. And there's not one trick that even halfway succeeded against us that has a chance against our kids. It just won't work. It just won't work. So I love you all. I'm getting ready to go up here and go to bed. Well, I'm not going to bed. I just lied. I'm going upstairs to watch a little bit of a YouTube video. Apparently, there was some discussion about some confusion between some of the urban apologists and the Hebrew Israelites. I'm gonna, I love that kind of, I love that kind of care, So I'm about to go watch that. And Lord's will, hopefully we'll see everybody for offline study tomorrow night with Pastor Demetrius. Uh, for those of you who I don't get a chance to see till we get or talk to until we get back from Philly next week. Love you. God bless you. Have a great night. Bye bye. Amen. You too, sis.